All right, it is 6:01. Sorry, got sidetracked here.
Do we have a quorum?
Not yet.
We need one more body.
You think Chris?
To be expected.
I said it could be. Where's the committee list? Is it in here?
No, it's in the
It's on
folder.
the folder.
Oh, okay.
So you said the Ludlow-Mount Holly swap?
Yeah. Yeah, the people are in the right. I just looked at the people.
Yeah, the people are
in the right place, but they're labeled incorrectly.
Gotcha.
That's what's in it. I didn't even notice that.
We had about 6 inches of mist,
Well, this one.
and it snowed all day today. So I have no idea where I'm going home to tonight.
Give him 5 minutes and see what you got.
Heritage Drive.
The flies were like right in your face. Oh,
Board membership and roles. That's the one.
to get there. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
On mine, it
Yeah,
just
that's
says,
the one.
board.
No, but on the,
December 1st.
yeah.
I took the whole
Oh,
fall,
Katie just logged in.
Oh, good.
You got your fifth.
going back to 2 weeks, and then taking 2 weeks off because they have, yeah, because Dartmouth has a 2 weeks. The Dartmouth has 2 weeks.
All right. With Katie here, we do have a quorum, so I will call the meeting to order at 6:02. On Zoom, we have Julie and Katie, star guest Dave. And then Dave, you want to go around start us around the table?
Dave Martin.
Kelly Tarbell.
Caitlin Benson.
Cheryl Ham.
Wade Millington.
Craig Peter.
Deb Higuera.
Thank you. I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. We are recording. Yes. All right. Any additions or deletions? Anything to the agenda?
I actually was wondering if we could take a 10-minute executive session to talk about teacher contract negotiations.
It's on there.
It's on there.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other discussion about the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Perfect. Approval of the minutes of October 8th from our regular meeting. Make a motion to approve the minutes from October 8th.
Okay. You
I'll make that
beat me to it. I'll
Okay,
second.
thank you. Any discussion about the meeting minutes?
I noticed I was on Zoom for that one, and there was some technical issue with the audio with the facilities, which is in here, which is perfect. So it just,
Yeah.
which is just, and that was just an overall issue, but
It dropped out, but then it came back.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, but so she just has that in there. So.
Right.
Amber has a hand up.
Sorry. We can't see only a few of you, so.
Okay. I noticed on my copy, and maybe Sydney already fixed it for your copy. I think I put the wrong location.
It's
It says Mount Holly Library.
So, yes.
Wasn't last month's in LES.
Yep, it was at LES. Good
So
catch.
I would recommend correcting that.
Any other? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Beautiful, thank you. Public comment?
I guess that might be me.
All right.
So you get my name, Dave Johnson, in the introduction. And as some of you know, I collected taxes here in Mount Holly for over 30 years. And I've had several taxpayers be upset and mad over the time. But this year, I've never had any taxpayers come that were in tears. And it's all because of the big increases to the school's budget. I think 19.3% increase in the tax rate is an obscene number for 1 year. And I think you should know that.
Thank you. Any other Public comment?
Don't see any hands.
No.
We'll be talking about the budget later on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Board member comment? Nothing online?
Nope.
I probably said it too, so. All right. Administrative reports.
Just do that. Gonna pull up these here. Kind of talk about hit the same things. Kind of we touched on the TRSU meeting, but since we're in budget season, it seems very kind of pertinent. So real kind of a fast run through since we're going to talk about the 1st of November kind of draft budget for Ludlow-Mount Holly in a few minutes, but really just kind of understanding the current climate and what's happening in the world outside and the impacts that it may have on our local budget here. Probably one of the biggest impacts that we're looking at now and over the next couple of years is that of that gigantic $2.7 billion education fund that funds education across the state of Vermont, and remembering that we all pay for each other, what happens locally has very little impact on local taxes. What happens in all the other districts across the state, because we all pay into that equally, has a much bigger impact. That 1.1 billion of that 2.7 billion is staff salaries, and that is predicted to rise by 15% over the next 3 years. Health benefits is another kind of contributing factor to the political financial environment right now. 5 years ago, for a family plan to provide benefits to an employee, it was $17,000. It is now $40,000, which is a 13% average annual increase from year to year over those 5 years. This year, it's reduced a little bit from the double-digit increases that we've been seeing. This year, it's projected to be a 7.3% increase. Biggest drivers are the increasing cost of prescription, impact of inflation, which we'll talk about in another slide here or so, on medical labor as well as their equipment costs. And then there is still kind of a pent-up demand to have the medical procedures done that were deferred during COVID. Inflation historically in New England has been 1.6%. You could depend on that year after year after year for decades until COVID hit. It has been higher. It has pretty much exceeded 3% for quite a while now, and it's been ticking up in recent months, which means that there's going to be a higher cost for services, for the supplies that we need, as well as the expectations in terms of negotiations with the staff, because they're paying more for what they receive. A couple of things to be aware of that is going to potentially have a pretty good impact on the districts. One of which was the elimination of the Title II grants. Those are grants that fund professional development across the school, teacher trainings, things like that across the district. The other piece that's kind of an unknown right now is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act grants. There's a lot of money that the district receives, probably about $400,000 at the TRSU level, or closer to $500,000 in that range. That's kind of up in the air right now. The federal government has been putting the money aside for it. But what they've been doing is they've been eliminating the people that actually distribute those funds so that they can't get out. So it's essentially kind of cutting the grants. And so we're kind of holding our breath right now to determine, what impact that's going to have on our local district. Other piece that's of great discussion, at least at the federal level, is the voucher program. With the voucher program, families receive a set amount from the government to use to spend on tuition at schools of their choice, typically independent schools. That they are trying to expand, and we'll talk a little bit about what the impact of that is in the next slide. They're also trying to expand the education savings plans, which is basically the same thing as a voucher, but it expands what that money can be spent on. Homeschool programming, as well as, mental health services and things like that for students, if those things are impacting their ability to be educated. Why this is important is because if you think about the state education fund, it's a big pool of money, right? All the districts around the state, they say what they need to operate. It goes to the state collects the money equally from all the taxpayers across the state, and then it's distributed. When you have these vouchers, they're like little siphons that suck money out of that pool for public education and decrease it, which puts an increasing burden on local districts in terms of having to increase their funding requests to be able to cover those losses. Just a second here. A lot of state legislative actions. The huge tax increase that happened 2 years ago was not due to district action. It was due to legislative action. What happened was the legislators went out with, the right idea, with the idea that some students, depending upon their circumstances, cost more to educate than others. And they did that big weighting study. And what they said is that some students that cost more, right, we need to weight them differently. We need to provide more funding for them so that they can be educated equitably compared to their peers. And that cost a significant amount more money in that current year when the weighting went into effect. And that was the reason for the huge increase that happened. Other state legislative actions that are having an impact or may have an impact, it was we got the PCB testing that the state required. It's an unfunded mandate right now. They have billions of dollars worth of remediation that would need to be done. The first year, they only put aside $35 million to do that. The second year, they put aside $9 million, and that was after they tried to put in zero and got so much flack. They had to throw a paltry amount at the problem to be able to say that they did something. You have universal free meals that came into effect a few years ago that had a dramatic impact, added probably 20 or 30 million to the overall requirements of the education fund. They added a child payroll tax to be able to help fund childcare within the state of Vermont. For every $100 of pay that our staff receives in a public school district, 44 cents goes in as part of that tax to help fund their childcare efforts. There are teacher retirement benefits that historically, way back when, used to be taken out of a different fund. They are now mostly taken out of the education fund, and that amount is growing and growing and growing. So again, it's money that's not available for local education of students, which means that districts have to raise more money to cover up that difference. Serious unaddressed mental health issues across the state. It is probably the biggest thing that we deal with, especially when we talk about special education costs right now. We have wonderful, talented teachers that are capable of managing students with emotional disabilities. The problem is that they are not specialists in actually remediating those problems. So we can manage it, but our ability and our skill set to actually be able to improve it and make it better is minimal. And so the cost tends to increase from year to year. And then lots of academic mandates that come from the state, like the standards-based report cards, personalized pathways, et cetera, that have had absolutely no impact in terms of academic performance, but required years and years of local manpower, time, effort, and resources to get into place, all through legislative mandates. Probably the biggest one that's on people's minds, and it's going to be impacting us potentially over the next couple of years, is Act 73, the redistricting efforts. Act 73 is very similar to Act 46, which was the consolidation of districts. It's part of the act that closed down Black River High School. Problem is that Act 46 didn't save any money. In fact, the state was required to put out reporting about the academic impact of Act 46 as well as the financial impact across the state. It never did. It did reporting, but it left those two pieces out, which prompted a Yale researcher to take a look at what the impact of Act 46 was and found that it actually increased the cost of educating students by over $1,300 per student when all was said and done. The reason that this is a big deal is because Act 73 is a much bigger version of Act 46. And so the odds of it actually saving anything are minimal. The odds of it actually causing cost increases is huge. The other piece that we're keeping an eye out on, and this is going to impact districts in 2028, 29, they are once again changing how they fund special education in the state of Vermont. They're going from a block grant to a weighted system. Remember, it was the weighting of students 2 years ago that caused the gigantic tax increase, and the legislature is going to do it again for special education students. So it looks like there's probably another big burst in terms of expenses that taxpayers are going to see. And again, all out of the hands of local educators and local districts. Again, things that we've got a plan for, and you'll see this when we talk about the draft budget for November, is the elimination of Title II funds, the potential reduction in special education support, that IDEA grant potentially going away because they don't have the people to administer the grant. The things that we're managing right now is trying to ensure that folks have competitive wages. And, that goes along with the contingency reserve piece a little bit. Contingencies reserves, one of the things we'll be doing is asking for some money to be put into reserve funds to cover the unknowns. Like special education is incredibly expensive. If all of a sudden $400,000, $500,000 worth of grant money to special education dries up out of the blue one day, what do we do? Because we are federally mandated to provide those supports to students. And so having some reserves on hand might not be a bad idea. Basically, what we're going to be looking at when we talk about the budget, level service, we're just trying to maintain what we're currently doing. We're not asking for more in terms of staffing or anything like that. There are some adjustments that need to be made to the non-bargaining staff salaries, right? The bargaining staff are the folks that are worked with and are covered by a union who does the work of making sure that their salaries stay competitive. The non-bargaining staff do not have that luxury. So central office every couple of years takes a look at what the comparables are across the state. And you're going to see an increase due to that because some of our non-bargaining staff are up to $10,000 behind where they should be. Just to be comparable and competitive, not to be in excess and not to be highly competitive, but just to be in the range of where they should be. We talked a little bit about the need maybe to build some reserves and to make sure that we're covering those Title II losses. We can't keep advancing education in the district without that professional development money. And if the state is going to take it away, or the federal government's going to take it away, and we want to keep advancing academic achievement, then we're going to need to cover at least some of those losses. So really fast and really quick. I apologize for that, but if there's questions, I'm happy to answer whatever people may have.
I have a question. Can you go back to the slide with the little squares on it? Oh, yeah, that one. The child care tax.
Mm-hmm.
I heard, and I want to clarify, that teachers are paying that.
No, districts do.
Right, but only school districts are paying that tax?
States.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to be clear. Like, I couldn't figure out how that would happen, but
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
It was, I think Cheryl can probably talk about it from the perspective of TRSU because it came into play when I was in the other district. It was a surprise. It was not well talked about a lot. Talked about much. And so when it happened, when the bill came due, it's like, oh, okay.
We were ready. We got it.
Yeah. So, but it was something that you didn't hear about. It wasn't in the news. It wasn't something that was talked about in most circles. So it seemed
You benefit from that by the subsidies that come in from the after school program.
Yeah, right. They're covering most of the costs for folks that need it after school.
So there is the legislative body of business or school district can decide to pay the full 44 cents themselves, or they can charge the employees 25%.
I don't know if we could do that without the union agreeing.
We were told no.
That would be a labor violation. Yes. And that,
Julie, can say this.
So it may be that in some places the teachers are paying. Is that right? I mean,
Well,
I mean, not here, but
A
Yeah.
small part of
A small part. Well, just the way Lane worded it the first time, it made it sound like only educators were paying that, and I didn't know how that would ever work. But Julie has her hand up.
Yeah, so I was a little bit confused about the slide that you spent some slides talking about the cost of school choice, which was a little bit confusing to me. I've been following this issue pretty closely, including the, 170-page report that the redistricting task force has issued. My understanding is that's not actually a cost driver in the system, that the cost drivers in the system in the state, if you were to look at like the top 5 things, healthcare, personnel costs, aging capital infrastructure, and because a very, very small percentage of students are in a district that allows school choice. I think it was like in this small single digits, less than 5%. So in our district, it's a thing. But I mean, if the point is that we are all paying for each other, across the state, my understanding is that that's actually not a cost factor.
So this was discussed as part of what the federal government is aiming at, not so much the state government.
The federal. Okay, so you're not talking about Act 73 here.
No, the state, to give credit to the state, when Act 73 was first being created, there was a push to expand the voucher system in the state of Vermont. Wasn't going to fly in the state when the final version of the law came back pretty hard to kind of put more restrictions on money going to independent schools. So that at the state level, you are correct. They've done a pretty good job about trying to control those costs. At the federal level, however, they are pushing it pretty hard. And so it's an unknown that's out there. We don't know what the impact of that federal influence might be over time. So very good pick up on that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
yeah, and again, it seems clear if we were to lose elementary school students to private schools, our cost per student would increase very quickly, since our total spending would change very, very little.
Yeah.
Right. But again, nobody in Vermont is proposing that, and so far, the feds haven't forced anyone to do it. I think they're working on incentives, right? So far, but okay, I got it. I think.
So again, it's the purpose, and I apologize. The purpose is really just kind of look out and seeing what the financial landscape is there and what we know and what we, should have in the back of our minds that might be a concern, right? As we kind of go into this budget season. So good conversation. I like the pickup.
I just have one more thing to add to this. And I think, because we are in budget season and because high tax rate continues to be obviously very concerning to many, I heard, bringing people to tears. I think it might be worthwhile to kind of just like touch really quickly again on how the state's school funding formula impacted our taxes. So, and I'm sorry if you already went over that, or maybe I missed it, or if it just, I think we should just kind of highlight it, a little bit more about, our share of state support, whether that increased or decreased, and how that impacted our local taxes.
So the local tax impact, we can go back the last 2 years. 2 years ago, the impact was from the weighting study. So what ended up happening was the state, again, with good intent and admirable intent, did a gigantic study and said, hey, if we're trying to figure out this education funding thing, we need to figure out how much it really does cost to educate kids. And they said, well, some students, depending upon their circumstances, if they're in a small rural district versus a city district, if they're on free and reduced lunch, those sorts of things will require additional funding to be able to be educated equitably to their peers. And said, well, if that's the case and we recognize this and the research is showing us this, then we should be giving districts more money for those students. And so the impact of that legislation was they had huge categories of, they had a number of categories of students that provided significant additional funding to a large number of the districts. But the way they did it was quirky, and it would have costed the same in the end. They set the system up so that they looked at the previous year's dollar amounts, they put the weighting in for the students, and then said, oh, here's a district that doesn't have as many of these students of higher need. We're going to take money from them and we're going to shift it over to the districts that do. Well, it did two things. The districts that received the money, and this district was one, you guys got, what, a little over $1 million bucks. OSSD probably got closer to $2 million in that shift. We were already operating well and fine. We didn't need the money, but the districts weren't going to give it back. There was no mechanism for them to give it back, so they received that funding. You had some districts, like some of the bigger ones in Chittenden County, that didn't have a lot of students that fell under those weighting categories, who lost millions of dollars because of that shift, now could not operate because of those losses in terms of what they were receiving from the state, and had to make up the difference. And so you had millions and tens of millions of dollars that had to be made up by those districts. And that overall increase is what caused taxes to go through the roof, because the legislators fiddled with the system. Again, good and admirable intent, but not understanding what the overall impact was going to be once it was said and done. Last year, it was not about what this district spent that caused the increase. The vast majority of the increase was due to the common level of appraisal changes. And not only was it probably, I actually had a group and I pulled slides together and did the calculations of the 20-cent increase. I think 16 cents of it was CLA. Again, because everybody pays for the education of every district across the state, if we ask for an additional $1 million, it is not coming from local taxpayers. It is coming from every taxpayer across the state. So the impact locally is small. But the cost, the increase in terms of the people's property values, which is where the common level of appraisal comes from, was the main driver in people's tax increases last year. Property values pretty much doubled almost across the state. I've got the numbers. I'm happy to share them with you. I've got the calculations. You can check my numbers. The property values have increased significantly across the state, and the state, through its annual survey, expects people to pay on that increase. Why were some districts affected more than others? Well, it's not so much about the value. It's about how much that CLA shifts from year to year. And there were huge shifts in our districts in the last year.
Right, and the Ludlow-Mount Holly property value, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I think Ludlow-Mount Holly property values went up more quickly than the rest of the state did, which meant that we were paying, our taxes went up more than commensurately with other districts.
Yeah. But this was a phenomenon that happened across the state, and the reason it happened across the state was because of the CLA. Now, the state put some additional pieces into the formula last year with, I believe, the intent of trying to moderate the impact of those dramatic shifts in CLA. I don't know, doesn't seem to have had the impact they intended, but what it did do was it made it hard to figure out how much of the tax increase was actually due to what the schools were doing and how much the CLA was impacting.
That was their sole intention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, when people hear school tax, they think, well, boy, it's what those schools are doing. Well, a little bit, but it's more about what the legislature's doing, and it's more about what's happening in terms of property taxes. So hopefully, Katie, did I hit the pieces? I probably went further than you intended. I apologize for that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And and the reason I brought it up is just because obviously affordability is number one on, I would say, the vast majority of Americans' minds right now. And especially what's happening with healthcare and being that it's budget season, I think that everyone is obviously in, fearful of what's going to happen and how they're going to pay their bills. And, I think going into budget season, we need to be incredibly sensitive about all of this. And maybe one way to kind of get ahead of it is to very quickly summarize, it's a perfect storm of inflated property values and kind of a lag in assessments, right? Is that accurate for the CLA part of it? And then also, issues with the state in terms of the education funding system. So I think that, as members of the board, the school board, maybe we get a lot of this kind of angst, directed at us when it feels like it's misdirected. And I want to kind of empower people to kind of take the right steps to, call your legislators. And, so maybe we just need a quick, I don't know, a one pager just to hand out and share with people on this, our school budget is not really what's increasing your taxes. These are the things that are, and these are the things you can do about that.
And I can give, I like the idea of the one pager. I can give a perfect example from my own taxes. I have an average value home in Randolph. Because of the CLA changes, they cut $2 million out of their local school budget. My taxes still went up by $2,500. Again, what happens locally has a small amount of impact in terms of local taxes, but a very small. It's more about either what the legislature is doing, the CLA is doing, and what the other districts collectively are doing across the state. So the only way to really get taxes to come down would be to have all districts make the same cuts at the same time and the same year. If everybody's doing it, or the majority are cutting, if they can, and you end up, you'd probably get a tax decrease. Even the governor's redistricting, based upon the 185 million that he said it would save, which it does not appear that it would, 185 million to a $2.7 billion overall education fund is a drop in the bucket. It would mean a savings of the average taxpayer in Vermont of about $300 per year. When you're paying $6,000 to $10,000 in property taxes a year, that doesn't seem like a lot to me. 300 is a lot of money. You cut my taxes in half, you're going to be my hero, right? But just some thoughts.
Julie?
Am I remembering correctly that last year there was some kind of, or maybe this never ended up happening, but maybe Cheryl or Elaine, wasn't there some kind of one-time buy down of the school budget, either property taxes, or wasn't there something like that?
This was the whole
they
coupon.
added
We
some
used
money
the
that was
coupon.
reserved to the general state support grant to the education fund in order to reduce the taxes.
Then that was last year. That was for the 25-26 budget.
Yeah.
So does that mean that this year we won't have that?
Correct.
Well, except didn't we end up putting 300,000 or something from?
That
was from 2 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm using rough numbers. It seems to me that 2 years ago we had 600,000 or 500,000 or 600,000 that we had rolled over in
The coupon.
And then the next year the coupon went down to 300,000.
So you take up for the
Talk about your state level, because that sets the yield of what the tax rate is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Julie's talking about.
All right, so we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
All right.
So other thoughts and questions? Good conversation. Gets me thinking too, especially since we're at the start of the season.
We'll have, when we get down to the details here,
Yep.
and then there'll be more questions.
All right. Principal's report?
All right.
Can I share my screen?
Yep. Let me make sure I got chest. You should be good.
So let me get to. Right tab. You go, right?
Thanks. All right. So we are both going to talk about a lot of the same things. Student-led conferences were last Thursday and Friday. The students did an amazing job sharing examples of their learning, both their challenges and their successes. They also shared goals and next steps in their learning. Participation was excellent, with over 95% of families participating. We're very pleased to have such actively engaged students, families, and staff. Last Thursday night was our school choice event. This year was Ludlow's turn to host. They did a great job. We collaborated. We had 11 schools from our region participating, and it provided families with opportunities to explore various middle and high school options. This event continues to be an important part of the selection process, and families were grateful to be able to compare and contrast so many choices in one convenient event. And transportation changes have been something we've been working closely together to provide. Many hours of work. It's been great. We both made adjustments to our school and bus schedules. We did our very best to consider feedback from families, both through initial surveys and then throughout the 2 weeks before the changes were implemented on November 3rd. We were very grateful for everyone's feedback and flexibility. It was definitely not ideal having to make a change like this 2 months into the school year. But the number of bus riders is up in both towns, and we appreciate Dennis, our driver. And we hope that this is a long-term successful partnership. So Deb and I are both going to share VTCAP data. We have it in 2 different formats. So this is a simple chart. Start with ELA. So you can see at the bottom of that, it goes 2023 up to 2024, and then the top box is 2025, and is the number of students taking the exams. And 3 years ago, the number of students who were proficient and proficient with distinction, we kind of put those two together. That was 56%. That rose to 70% last year, and now a little bit of a slide back, 68% last spring. You can see the numbers in the other categories. Approaching has gone down from 24% down to 20%, and emerging, which is further away from proficient, started at 20% and has gone down to 10% and then 12%. Math. So I guess I can take questions if anybody has questions.
Go back up to ELA.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference between 70 and 68 is statistically insignificant.
Right.
So there's 3% slop. So you could actually, be increasing, you could be maintaining, you could be going down. You won't know until you get another year's data.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, our sizes are so small. So on the math,
The math, that's very impressive.
yeah, the math, I think we've both been very pleased with our progress in both schools. Back in 2023, the number of students that were proficient or proficient with distinction was only 43%. We're working really hard in both literacy and in math. That has steadily risen to 57% the year after, and then last spring, 73%, which is really quite high in terms of the state. You can see those approaching numbers have started to tick down from 25% in 23 down to 20% in 25. And the emerging numbers from almost a third of our students really not approaching proficiency to only 7%. So we're hoping to keep building on that.
Really quick before we move on, do you attribute any of that to coming out of COVID, those kind of lower numbers, especially in the 2023 school year. Because am I right? I remember hearing a statistic that like math overall across the entire nation just tanked after
Math and
COVID.
littles. Yeah.
Math particularly tanked after COVID, and the 2023 year with the VT cap assessment was the first year that we gave that assessment. So there was a shift from the SBAC to the VT cap. I know it sounds like alphabet soup, but just having been an administrator throughout different assessments, the first year was horrific in getting kids rostered, getting kids into the places they needed to be, actually getting kids on the assessment. So the data from 23, I don't know how accurate that data actually is, just based on my experience in my previous district in the issues and problems we had. It was like they were building the airplane while they were flying it.
What's really impressive, I think, about at least the current status at the 2025, was a couple of things. I had a conversation with the Assistant Secretary of Education a few months back, and they talked about how when the VCAP was created, and the state was working on it, they had two groups. They had the group that was working on the test. They had the group that was working on the curriculum that's supposed to be taught, so that the kids are going to be tested on by the VCAP. And they stated the two groups never talked to each other, right? So what the test is actually stressing is not necessarily what the group that worked on curriculum said was the most important. So why I bring this back to the results being impressive was because even if there is a mismatch between what you're teaching and the test, if you are teaching students at the higher levels of critical thinking, if they've got a good foundation, they're going to be able to figure it out anyway. And I think that's a little bit of what you see going on there. So it's good work that's been done. The other piece that I'll throw out there is when my first year that I came in from Massachusetts, and took a look at the testing in the first district that I was in here, there was a limiting factor, based upon the size of the classes, based upon the fact that a lot of schools had multi-grade classrooms at the elementary level, based upon the amount of resources that were flowing in. The limiting factor was about 70%, being able to hit the 70% threshold or slightly above that is probably as good as you can do in Vermont at that time without some exceptional things happening. So those are impressive scores.
Do you have, or can you get state level averages?
They just disembargoed things at the very end of October. So I think folks are looking, I don't know if they remember, but I put a spreadsheet together as an assignment to pull that data up. So each school is going to enter its own. Yeah. So we'll be able to present that in a month or so. Yeah.
If they haven't done this yet, but last spring when we presented the 2024 data, so the red data, we were, there was an independent organization called School Digger that went and did a meta-analysis of all that data throughout Vermont. And that was when we got into the top 10. We tied among the top 10 schools in the state with those numbers. And so these numbers are a little bit better. Yeah. So this is exactly the same data. So the numbers are all the same. It's just a more visual way to look at it. And you can see down on the right-hand column, the 12 percentage point increase from 56% proficient to 68% proficient is a 21% growth rate.
And it looks like you did even better. This one, it doesn't aggregate 3 and 4. 3 and 4 are together or proficient, isn't that right?
Correct.
And so I see the level 4 in reading got a nice jump.
In 2025, yeah.
People moved from level 3 to level 4.
Yeah. And you can see that the level 1s are going down, and the level 2s are,
They're all
little
shifting.
little shift. And then on the math side, that 30 percentage point change from 43% proficient or proficient with distinction up to 73% is a 70% increase. So,
Wow.
like Lane said, it's really, I'm so proud of our kids and our staff, our families. I mean, that 95% engagement in conferencing, I mean, that's indicative of, there's just so many measures, and our school climate data supports this in both schools. Deb's doing a tremendous job down in Ludlow.
Well, on average, just by comparison, without knowing this year's state data, the state in terms of mathematics probably averages low 40s.
Yeah.
And the state in terms of ELA is probably a little bit higher. It's probably just around the 50% on a trend line.
So we're getting in both schools, 20% higher than that, like getting into the 70% range in ELA and we're meeting our continuous improvement plan goals and exceeding them. And we keep each year setting the bar higher. So we're hoping to do that again. It's interesting. We get new students every year. Last year we had a big graduating sixth grade that we had a lot of those folks with us for their whole Mount Holly career. It's really tricky. I don't know if you're experiencing this. We didn't talk about this part, but we've got people coming in from other states and other districts in Vermont, and we're like, whoa. It's like, okay, there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And they haven't had the benefit of getting everything from preschool on up. This whole research-based set of curricula that we have really builds in math and in literacy and even in the social and emotional learning. You really see that growth when 4-year-olds are starting to lead their conferences. And then you see how they are when they're in first grade, and then again in fourth grade, and then sixth, all those years of practice, they know where they're at and what they need to do next.
So when I looked this morning, those charts weren't in the packet yet. Are they in there now? Or if they're not in there now, get.
Yeah, they're in there now. They
Okay, thank you.
They're not. I did send Sydney an email. I was late, so it was not Sydney's fault. But he has this one that you just saw with both charts and all the other information.
Yeah, he'll drop them in. Right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
We restricted who had access to those because we had those folders around for everybody too. We had it so everybody had major access, and unintentionally they would go in and move stuff around, and we lose things. So
yeah.
With numbers like that, we'll forgive you for being a little late.
Yeah. We've been hit hard. I think we had 6 people out today. Like for the last week, it's just been. Yeah. So I think I'm done. If you have any questions, since
we're going to be doing budgeting, do you have your enrollment by grade?
I mean, we're at 94 kids, and we're averaging 10 to 13 per class.
And is it pretty evenly distributed? I know in Ludlow, we had some funny imbalances, but.
Yeah, they've got a couple.
We still have some funny imbalances.
Right. But in Mount Holly, it's more evenly spread out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Our enrollment is about 84. We keep having families come and go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a moving target. We had about 80% of our families participate in student-led conferences. As Craig says, it's great to see kids come in. We had some families that had sick children. We had some families who were out of town for family emergencies, and those conferences will happen. And one of our 6th graders was ill on that day, and he was able to do his conference from home because he had built a slideshow. So he was able to do that from a distance and did miss out on there. 6th grade had 100% of students participate in their conferences this year. So that was a great number. School choice event was Thursday night. It's always interesting to see families and schools come. We had about 11 schools come and set up tables. And it's interesting because we had heard feedback that they had wanted it in the fall, and now people are saying, well, maybe it would be better in the spring. So I don't know when the best time is to offer that, but the schools were definitely appreciative in having an opportunity to meet with our families. Transportation, we've worked really hard at securing a bus driver. And it was kind of multifaceted, so we were able to work with Dennis, and that allowed him to have a full-time job. So that is a huge benefit to Dennis, and it gives him work and makes him feel valuable. It also provided transportation for both of our schools. Yes, we did have to make some shifts and changes in our start times and end times of the day. But as Craig said, we've seen an increase in ridership, and Ludlow has also seen an increase of students coming for breakfast. So that's a win-win. Some of our students who had been chronically absent due to a lack of transportation are now attending on a more regular basis. It's been 2 weeks, and they've been far more consistent in their attendance. So that's definitely a win for us. Similar.
Deb, I just think that would be a good addition, especially during budget season when we're talking about transportation. Those numbers in a more concrete form would be great, for both schools.
I know that Mount Holly said that their ridership has doubled, according to what Dennis said. And we didn't have anything to go by because we didn't have transportation at all. But we have probably 15 to 20 students ride in the morning and about 15 in the afternoon. And we also include an afternoon pre-K run for our families. Otherwise, those students would not be able to attend school in the winter because they wouldn't be able to get to daycare with so many families that work on the mountains. But I can certainly get more concrete information for you. Here is our assessment data, VTCAP. Reading, this assessment is given in elementary school for students in grades 3 through 6. So our numbers, the population you see is our 3rd through 6th grade numbers there. You can see our reading proficiency has gone from 50% in 23 to 72%. Last year, again, this is proficient with distinction. So we're very happy to see that. And it is a 20 percentage point increase. Our math assessment, we went from having 29% proficient to 50% proficient. So it really is a testament to the curriculum and the strong teachers we have at Ludlow Elementary School, really providing great instruction for our kids. We also attribute that to having the intervention blocks consistently in place for the past 2 years, this being our 3rd year, and having regular data teams to look at student data and design instruction for those students who are falling below proficient, and really working with those kids to grow and succeed. And again, here's a different view of our data. Mine is a little bit different than Craig's. So you'll see the level 3s and 4s, and each bar has a year. So you can see the 3-year comparison in reading. And the data on the side is the same that you saw in the tables before. So there's our reading data. And then this is our math data. So again, we're seeing levels 2s and 3s go down, the level 2 and level 1 go down, and the 3s and 4s going up. So. Questions?
I mean, obviously going in the right direction, but it looks like your math is still somewhat behind You're reading.
Yes.
That's a fair.
That is very fair to say. And again, remember Ludlow for several years had multi-grade across the board for both reading and math.
Mhm.
Last year was the first year that we had single grade math classes. So again, teaching ELA in a multi-grade class is very different than teaching a math in a multi-grade class, where ELA, you can differentiate and use similar materials. Within math, you have to teach foundational skills, and you need the foundational skills before you move to the next level or meet the next set of learning targets. And sometimes those are different for each grade level and they build on one another. So in a multi-grade classroom, teachers were only able to provide about half the direct instruction as to what they do in a single grade math class. You still have to differentiate because of the different levels, but
Right. I mean, some elementary teachers have historically been stronger in ELA than in math. And I'm wondering if more professional development of some kind would be helpful.
Yeah, so one thing that both schools, our teachers have been very engaged in what's called OGAP training, ongoing assessment project. And it is very comprehensive. It's an excellent approach. And I think that is helping teachers in both schools. I think Deb's point about multi-age is a really good one. And, you know, we're really fortunate to be able to work so closely together, to have the same curricula in all three major areas, to be using the same types of approaches with data teams every week and multi-layered systems of support. So there's a lot of commonalities of what we're doing. And that's true. It's spreading across the two rivers, well, onto the GM side as well.
Any questions for Deborah, Craig?
Thank you.
Facilities?
Move this up. So Todd's off at Pennsylvania deer hunting right now. Give me just a second. One of the big things, kind of looking back at the minutes from the last meeting, the discussion from the last meeting, related to facilities, was revisiting the roof estimates. So I get this up here.
As I recall, you wanted to keep those confidential, didn't you?
No, who provided them?
Oh, okay.
Not so much the actual
Got it.
estimates on the roof itself. So the three estimates that we got, you have the complete kind of replacement of the shingles across the entire building, as well as fixing any of the problems that are underneath the shingles themselves at $249,000. You've got looking at just reshingling the areas that need it the most, right? That was kind of the repair idea, is we got to reshingle it, and then we'll fix whatever problems exist in the substructure underneath those shingles. And then the idea that's not recommended was, but it was a good idea, but once we found out the details of it, it's not recommended, was just putting new shingles over the old. And so those are the costs there. And I think that one of the reasons it's pertinent maybe for the board to take a look at these is because, you know, as we're talking about budgets, is there an intent to move on any of these? Which would you move on? And then, you know, is this something for reserve funds and capital funds, or is there another way the board would choose about going to, you know, acquire these funds if the decision was made to acquire those? So.
And so am I wrong in remembering that if we were to choose the middle option there and only do part of the job, it probably wouldn't be a whole lot of years until we had to do the rest of it, and that the total cost would be greater if we were to choose the only do part of its work now.
Yeah, it wouldn't be 149,000 to come back and do the rest, based on what you're asking. Okay. Yeah. The other piece is the idea that we're living in the land of tariffs, which haven't had as much of an impact yet. as may happen down the road. So there's a big unknown there. There's also, right, we're in the age of inflation right now, which is unusual for the US for many years. And the fact that, once they're already here and they've got all the equipment out here and they're doing the work, that costs a lot of money in terms of just setting that piece up. And so, if you do it all at once, there's only that one setup cost. If you come out and you do it twice, right, they got to get all that equipment out of here and then come back a second time and then spend a day or two of labor getting all that stuff set up to be able to just do it. So it's cheaper to do it all at once if that were the pathway.
So is this the time to move that we put out, we request proposals to do the whole job?
That's something, board.
Okay.
A motion.
Okay, I'll move that we, and you can tell me the right word, request proposals, is that the right?
We'll have to bid request.
Okay, to reshingle the whole roof.
I have a question. I think I need to understand more.
Can we second the motion and then have a discussion? Just to keep it clean?
Okay, can you restate the motion?
Well, give me David.
Okay. No, I move that we request bids or proposals to reshingle the entire roof.
Is there a second to reshingle the entire roof of Dave's proposal?
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay. We have a second. Julie, ask your question.
So where did this 249,000 number come from if we haven't already collected bids? I thought we had collected bids already.
No, what we did and what the request was to go out and get estimates on what these costs would be. So we reached out to a well-known good roofing company, had them provide these estimates for us to give us pretty solid ballpark figures of what the costs would be. But yes, it would still need to go out to bid. This is just given the board information it needs to decide in the direction it may want to go.
And when does this work need to be done, do we think? Can it be, we expect it'll be this budget year or next?
Likely be next summer.
Okay.
Right.
Summer of 26.
Yes.
So for the 26, 27 budget.
Which is the
Possibly.
budget we're talking about now, which
Yeah.
you're going to see slides on in a little bit.
Except as I recall, if we still have some money in our maintenance budget as we get to June, right?
Yeah.
We could use some of that money to
Right now, there's around 154,000 and we still have the 350,000 that was budgeted this year that needs to go right to go.
You're going to see it in the slides.
Okay.
It comes up too. But going out to bid does not mean that you are committed to
That's my next one.
following through. Yes.
right. If it comes in at $500,000, we say no, thank you.
Really wondering, it'd be nice to kind of keep this in mind as we see the next slides on the budgeting. What Sharon wants.
And to that point, though, because we need to think about this in terms of the overall budget, I think there's obviously, just in these figures, there's about roughly 140K difference between the purple and the blue. So I would want to see bids for both of those jobs because depending on the larger overall budget, I don't know that we have room in our budget to do the entire new roof. I would personally like to see dollars in our budget go towards other things like teachers if need be. And I just want to see that overall budget before I feel comfortable making a decision.
Should we postpone action on the motion until we're having our whole budget discussion?
That's completely your prerogative.
Is that?
I'm not recommending or saying one. I'm just giving you the numbers so the board can decide.
Right. My thought is, and I'm going to say the hard things that other people are saying out and about, not that these are things I believe, but I hear the conversation. Why are we going to spend $250,000 on a roof when we don't know what the state's going to do with buildings and school closures and those kinds of things. We also know that the better quality our school is in, the more likely we are to be able to keep it open. And I think I do hear a lot of validity in not spending money to then in 2 years spend more money when we could do it now and it is a little bit more economical. But I agree. I think there's a lot of discussion to be had before we make those decisions. But I also know that if we want to get on somebody's schedule, time is of the essence. So do we want, I don't know, the official, do we need to vote down Dave's budget at the moment and revisit it at the later budget time?
Well, I mean, even later in this meeting, I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
With the potential, I might make it again, as we're discussing the budget.
Okay.
So the two pieces, just to add to the thought process here. So the new shingle roof in the areas that need it, that covers about 8,000 square feet. The total new shingle roof covers a little over, I believe it's 22,000 square feet. So they're those repairs that it's a smaller area, it's a third, but the cost is high because there are some repairs that are needed there. The other piece that the redistricting still hasn't quite figured out, but I can tell you current discussion is there's a foundation formula. So the foundation formula would be the money that you get per kid that's paid for by everybody in the state. If you go above that foundation formula, it comes from local taxes. Here, if you were to do it now, it would all come from payments from everybody across the state. So just, again, I don't know where that is going to land. That idea of that local share, it all comes from local taxes. If it's above a certain amount, that may not pass the constitutional muster because it's against equality. But that's kind of where the discussions are in the system right now. So just try to foreshadow.
So Dave has officially withdrawn his motion. Do we want to continue this conversation when we look at the budget in a second?
I just have one more clarifying question. Who owns the school building and the property?
District. Yeah. The school district.
The Ludlow-Mount Hollow School District.
Right.
Okay. It wasn't the Black River building. Isn't that owned by the town?
Yes, now it is.
Now it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
now
sold
it is.
to them.
Got it. Okay. So the district owns both the.
Hey, then
Really surprising.
yeah.
Oh,
So the district owns both school buildings and both properties they sit on?
Yes, there's part of the
Okay.
part of the larger acreage, I guess, if you will, at Ludlow is owned by the town. It went with the high school, but the
school's on a postage stamp,
right.
literally.
Okay.
But
Thank
yes,
you.
we own the buildings and property.
Okay. Thanks.
You had me looking at Cheryl because we're dealing with the Cavendish where the district owns the land. We lease the land to the library building that's actually a separate building, even though it's attached to the school building,
Yeah.
which we own. We don't own the library, but we own the school. And the insurance company's so confused it doesn't know who to insure, how to insure.
That's good. Keeps them on their toes. Do we want to move to financial report at the moment?
Yes.
Sounds good.
All right, I'll do a quick overview of where we are. So you have October's financial in there. Thus far, we've spent 21.77%, and we're a third of the way through the school year, which is a very scary concept there. But everything looks good. The stuff that I put down on the bottom is the stuff that we talked about last month. Food service is at 26.12%. So both are doing well, and I currently don't see anything jumping out at me that I need to tell you about.
Can you, for clarification purposes, who pays for the food service and how do we get any reimbursement, if any?
We get currently, I will preface that with currently.
So I'm asking currently.
We're on a CEP program, which is a community eligibility program. And so they take the number of our students, and based on the free and reduced numbers, the free kids that are directly certified, meaning they have a state benefit, whether it's SNAP, TANF, 4 squares, 3 squares, whichever squares that one is, or Medicaid, those students count toward that CEP rate. And so that percentage needs free of our students, and then the paid portion of the kids that eat meals comes from universal meals at the state level. But then there's what we have that's not covered by MOP either, and that's a supplement to your supplemented by your general fund budget. So I think was 25 last year, and I think it's going to be about 40 this year.
And last year you had a big impact on local budget because they changed the threshold to qualify for free and reduced lunch, and those students received significant weight increase. And so I believe it was like, it was close to $1 million, wasn't it? It was a huge amount of money.
I know it's about 20 FTEs, so.
Yeah, it was a huge loss.
So we're currently, just because this is why I'm asking, we are currently paying, did you say 40% of our food budget out of local taxes that we are committed to do? No. Okay. Clarify that again for me then.
So there's 3 funding sources. One's the federal government, one's the state, and one's local. And it's like $25,000, not percent.
Not percent.
Oh, okay.
And this year, I think it's going to be closer to 40%. I mean, $40. Yeah. So, yeah.
Right.
So we do contribute to it.
And we're forced to. We have no control over that.
You can, but you're going to cut back on the food that you serve to the kids, or the people that make it and serve it to the students. So forced, yeah. But all my years of working in the school district, I've never seen a surplus. So
right.
So Cheryl, might there be any efficiencies in having the supervisory union do the food service instead of the 2 districts separately, or the distance is just big enough that?
No, I don't know that there would be any efficiencies in that. The efficiency for me would be someone to oversee the whole thing, because I am the school food authority and the state's eyes, but I don't have an opportunity to get out into the schools and see. So that would for them, but I would say from a cost standpoint, I don't see it.
Do we have any insight into if we didn't have a universal food service program and it was just like an opt-in kind of thing? Do we know roughly like what percentage of our students would opt out of the food service program?
You'd have to go back to look at your numbers prior to COVID, and those are far enough away. I don't know how reliable they would be.
I can look while we're talking and tell you, actually, maybe I can tell you this. So last year we received $18,388 is what we received from Universal Meals. So if that wasn't there and we were still CEP, that's what we'd have to absorb into our budget. Does that answer your question?
I don't know. I think I'm still a little confused.
So we would still be on the CEP program, the community eligibility program.
Okay.
And so the majority of our students, or I think it's around 76% of our kids, so they just take the number, if there was 100 kids, 76 of them who ate would get a free meal, and then we would get universal meals for the other 24.
Okay.
So if we didn't have that, so if we didn't have that, and we still offered free meals, the general fund budget would have to absorb that $18,388.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think Lane's gonna start us off with the budget.
No, it's a nice way to hand the buck. Okay.
I like some nice pictures.
So, well,
It spells elementary, yeah.
what's interesting is I don't understand how artificial intelligence can be so good with like writing, but whenever it creates a picture, it can never spell things correctly in the picture. It's really like a crazy thing because the funnest part is while I'm typing up the slides is having AI in the background making the pictures for them.
Yeah.
But so again, this is November. It's early in the season. It's really taking a look. I call it the pie in the sky kind of budget because it's really just taking a basic look at things and hopefully getting some feedback from the board and the community. But the goals of this budget that you're going to see tonight are keeping things level service. Right, level service means that we're not really adding staff, we're not taking staff away, we're just trying to keep doing what we're doing. The problem is that inflation has been high. Right, we're in negotiations actually with 3 of the contracts across the TRSU. So there's a lot of impacts there and a lot of costs associated with just keeping things the same. One of the things is what we just talked about was this idea of maybe addressing some deferred maintenance, which is the roof on the building in terms of this budget. And we'll touch on that in a little bit bigger detail when we start to talk about surplus and reserves. Trying, again, level service means keeping doing what we're doing. If we're going to be losing Title II grant money from the federal government, is building it into our own budgets to compensate at least for a little bit of it. And then because we really don't know what the heck is happening with redistricting, especially after the last meeting that they had, where the redistricting committee basically is starting to take a stand like we thought and saying, you're not getting what you asked from us because we think you're rushing it and it's not going to work anyway. You need a 10-year plan, and these are some of the things that we would recommend as a part of that plan. So again, the crystal ball is unclear about what redistricting means until we get through the legislative session. And so this budget is just looking at things staying the way they've always been. No redistricting, no, nothing happened, just the normal state of play. So 2025-26 is the year that we are currently in. That was 10.1 million. It was a 15.22% increase from the previous year. A lot of that at the local level at least had to do with the increase in staffing that we tried to get to make sure that it wasn't multi-grade. And when I say an increase in staffing, it was really going back to the staffing level prior to the year before when all the cuts were made. 2026-27 in the green there is the year that we are looking forward to. So we're looking at a $10.9 million budget. Overall change is a little over 8% and $814,000. And then we'll go into the detail of where that's coming from. You've got some mandated costs here, right? You've got, I call it contractual salaries. This is the cost for the step raises, the things that are currently in the current contract, right? The teachers go up a step each year. There's step raises in the support staff contracts as well. So you're looking at an increase of $129,000. Benefits, and Cheryl was wrapping her head around this. The cost of benefits for these folks is actually going to go down by about $5,000 in the net. Probably due to people changing around, which plans and whatnot they are on. Plus the fact we were never able to get a teacher for Ludlow-Mount Holly, if I remember.
Correct. We were still down 1 teacher.
And so that was cut out of this as well. We've got the negotiations contingency. In other words, we're anticipating where the negotiations with the teachers union may fall. As well as increases for the non-bargaining staff to try to get them at least up to the comparables. And so that's a $93,000 increase. You got the central office, their salary increases as well as their benefit changes. $58,000 to try to mitigate the loss of Title II funding. That's the professional development. Those are the programs that are currently in place and the teachers have been trained on and are being trained on that are supporting the improvements that you were seeing in the academic data that Craig and Deb showed you a little while ago. And then the huge one, as always, is special education, 403,000. And most of that is not due to students coming into the district from outside. That is a simple increase in the cost for services, current services that are being provided.
Can you say more about why the services increased so much?
Just the cost. Yeah.
I'm going to be more blunt because they can. If we are sending somebody out to an outplacement, and that is the one group in the state that's able to provide those services, it's kind of like health insurance.
Places like ODP, it's a program we've been involved in for many, many years. Last year I budgeted $30,000 per student. I've heard this year it's going to be 44. And that's just one program, but the average cost has got to be in the high 60s, low 70s of special education.
They're also there's transportation. They're also facing the same pressures that we are in terms of inflation. The folks that are working for them are going to be expecting more because the cost of living is much higher than it's been in the past, would be my best guesses. Yeah.
So, Kate, how much of that increase is related to outplacements? Do you know?
I'd have to go back and deep dive that.
Because as I recall, we get some reimbursement from outplacement.
We get a huge reimbursement on that. It's not 100%, but we cover a great deal of the costs with that.
But it's a circuit breaker reimbursement, if I'm correct, right? We pay up to a certain amount, and then above that amount, we start to get reimbursed for.
Right.
So it's for exceptional costs. It's not for all.
Right. So this increase is before you get to that. That's
Well, and that keeps going up each year. So the threshold is higher that we have to meet. But sadly, it's getting easier to meet that because of the cost of everything.
And this is true across the state. This is not just a local.
And as I recall, that's one of the things we're hoping the new BOCES might, in future years, be able to mitigate. Is that right?
There are. So see if I can, in a very quickly kind of explain at least my thinking on it, and then people can kind of push back a little bit. What I see is I see a different sort of child coming in need of services, right? It's not an academic need that a student has. It's an emotional need that gets in the way of them being able to access their academics the way that they should. Teachers and special educators, and you can push back, are very well equipped for the academic need. In other words, not only being able to work with the child and having them access the curriculum, but also being able to help the child become independent over time so that they can eventually do it themselves. I would argue very strongly that we are not equipped to do little more than manage the social emotional needs, the mental health challenges that we are facing. We can manage them. We do that by putting additional people on the children typically, but being able to actually mitigate, to be able to change those behaviors so that the students become more independent is mostly beyond our skill set. That said, let's go back to what was the original question here, because it was important for me to tie it back.
The question was, can BOCES begin offering some of these programs that now we're paying for outplacement?
If BOCES...
Or help us do them.
If, and so it's an if. Mm-hmm. If BOCES can attract the mental health professionals needed so that we can tap into them to work with the students that have those challenges and actually improve the problem, yes. Do I believe they're going to be able to do it? I really don't know. One of the reasons that I looked very closely to make sure that we had an out if we could was because the state of Vermont has trouble getting mental health professionals in general.
Yep.
And so to expect that we're going to get mental health professionals relative to education is an unknown. Could we get 2 or 3 because BOCES will be able to pay them what they're worth? Hopefully. But I don't know the answer, which is why it's good that we have an out.
So I mean, is there does the new BOCES have anyone working for them yet? I mean, anybody, no, I mean, there's nobody.
They're still in formation.
There's nobody yet to ask the
Yeah.
question to say, can you work on this? Is that right?
We have the Vermont Learning Collaborative, which is like BOCES. Basically, the Vermont Learning Collaborative is being replaced by BOCES. So we do have a collaborative where we get some services, not necessarily the ones we always need. But the other thing that they do provide us is with the professional development for the special educators that is helpful. And it's much reduced cost than if we had to go out and get it on our own.
Don't make my question, sorry for having so many questions, but no, is there somebody at the cooperative or who will be at the BOCES that you can start this discussion with to say, is this something that you can start doing? You know, and how soon, and you know, and when can you maybe start doing it?
My guess is the earliest would be next year. And the rationale being is those BOCES, they're still forming, right? The state and the law that went out, it was either 5 or 7 that they were going to allow these BOCES collaboratives to form. And so the districts are deciding whether or not they are joining together. They're still not complete. I believe in our region, they're still looking for one more district to join. Once they have all the districts agree that they're willing to join, it then needs to go to the state for approval.
Like 8 or 9 districts
Right now.
Is it my understanding, and maybe this will help Dave, that BOCES will be like a department store for us to shop at to get what we need?
Yep.
And by having the ability to mass coordinate, there's possible savings in that. Won't happen.
So,
and also, my other thing that I will say till I'm in the ground, we cannot fix, as educators, as teachers, as a school board, we cannot fix what is systemically wrong with our communities at the moment as educators. It has to come from outside. We have to be able to help families get the things they need, get the support they need, so that children, the biggest drivers of student outcome, don't happen in schools, they happen in homes. And that is where we are sorely lacking in the ability to make change. And if we can't make change at a community level, we can't make change in our school easily or permanently or realistically. And that is my soapbox.
I am in 100% agreement with you. My worry with the BOCES model is, let's say we had 2 kids with exceptional needs that were costing, $600,000, $700,000 each.
Mm-hmm.
If the BOCES is able to get 1 or 2 of these specialized people to be able to work with them, that model will work because there's a limited number of students they need to work with. My guess is that the number of students right now that need those specialized services is going to be overwhelming for what BOCES could provide.
Yeah.
There needs to be a more systemic addressing of the problem. One of the biggest and the most simple things of all, and then I'll get off my soapbox and we'll get back to the board here, is if I compare the Vermont districts to Belmont and Marblehead and Swampscott, the top performing in the country, the only difference between the kids here and the kids there are the value that those parents place on education. Vermonters, they value education, and people can yell at me for saying this, but I've been around long enough that I truly believe it. They value education as it's a box to check off. Yeah, you gotta get through, you gotta get your diploma. In Massachusetts, from their perspective, your whole life and your future and your ability to live and succeed and be successful all depends upon what you do here and now in terms of your education. And that subtle difference means everything. But anyway.
I mean, not for today, but I guess for the future, I'd ask the question of how we can convince the legislature and the governor, of the importance of this. Is VSBA, do they push in that direction at all?
It's a conversation piece.
Right.
But the power to actually evoke the change, off the cuff, I would say the first step would be for the state to put in an incentive program to actually attract people to come here that have these professional skills. First off, to get them into the medical community because they don't exist there, right? Because that's where a lot of the people get those services from that are so sorely needed. And then secondarily to get their help in terms of the schools, but they don't even have it in the medical community across the state of Vermont to be able to provide those services.
Right. I mean, I guess ask us to try to think. Two of the three Rutland senators are pretty senior and have, have quite a bit of influence. And I'm wondering if we can somehow get them to start pushing in this direction.
I think yes. I think the problem that you're going to encounter is the same that we are with school budgets, is they waited too long. And when you wait too long to address a problem of the magnitude that the taxes are in the state of Vermont and the mental health challenges in the state of Vermont, you can't do it and cut costs at the same time. You are going to have to increase what you were paying, get things on the right track, and then you will experience cost savings down the line. So they are in the middle of a huge conflict now of you really have to increase costs to fix the problems because you deferred stuff for so long before you're actually going to see some savings. And they're not going to be willing to do that.
And as we all know, if they wait 5 more years to do it, the cost will be that much more extreme.
Have anybody here anyways?
But I'm sorry. All right, I'll get off that horse for now.
Right.
All right. So it's on financial budget stuff.
So questions on any of these parts and pieces? So these are the changes that add up to the overall.
I just think in the future, like when we go and we have more public, as we're talking about budgeting stuff, to go back to like the Title I loss, how that's the professional development, to show like in the same slides, how the increase has shown with the scores for both the schools.
That could be a part of the one pager that Katie said.
Yeah, like with this loss, we will lose this and could potentially lose that increase.
I think since the special ed number is such a big number, it would be helpful to have some pieces of that if it's possible.
I also, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom, so I'm just going to keep shouting out.
Can't see you when there's a presentation up there, so I apologize. You better speak it up.
No worries.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions actually about the special education piece. To Kelly's point, with the family outreach, it was my understanding that Joe Banya was this person and then she left. Do we currently have a family outreach person in our district?
So
No, we don't.
No, but I mean, we use COVID money to have one. Is that right?
sounds right.
This is pre-COVID. Yeah.
No, we
It was
had,
pre-COVID? Okay.
just remember Marianne gig.
Yeah, we had Marianne and then Joe did it for a while. Yeah.
So how that model, Katie, usually works in most states is the outreach workers are town employees.
Okay.
And so like as a district, if we're managing a mental health challenge with a child, there's only so much we can do within the school district. We can help, but we can't fix things. We would reach out to those outreach workers who had the ability to go into the home to secure services from the state, assuming the state has services, which Vermont does not, to be able to apply to that problem and help fix it. So there's a whole layer of supports that are missing that are extremely costly if they're in place, but they are much less costly than what you're encountering now because you didn't have them. And I don't mean us here, I mean the state
It's a
collectively.
state issue. Well, it's a country issue, but
I mean, I know that Joe was a huge help to some number of families.
Absolutely.
And that I think we're missing that by not having anyone do that. We're missing something.
Oh, Vermont has very well-meaning parents. Lots of times they just don't know what to do and just need somebody to show them the way. And they're more than happy to.
Right. No, and I think many of the parents who need it the most are the least apt to know how to navigate the system and get the help that they need. And I think that's part of what she did an excellent job at.
Great.
So 2 different colors up here, surplus and reserves. difference between the two, surplus is what you have left over at the end of the budget year. Reserves means somebody voted to do something with that surplus and put it in an account for future use for a specific purpose. So surplus wise, at the end of 2024-25, there was 479,000 left over in the budget. You used 181,000 of it as the coupon to subsidize the current year that we are in, which left 298,000, 125,000 left over for the board and or the town to vote on and decide what to do with for the next year or the coming years. Currently in reserves. So this is money that you currently have that is geared for a specific purpose. There's 154,000. There was a $350,000 requested add to the budget to add to that reserve fund so that if the budget goes through, if it's approved by the voters and whatnot, you would have 504,000 in that reserve fund for next year.
So there's the 350 is what we have in this year's budget to put in.
So it's already there.
So, well, it's not already there. We're waiting for some cash flow to happen, David, so that we
From the taxpayers. Yeah.
David's the treasurer of Mount Holly.
So I apologize. So it's a good catch on that.
So, yeah, so at the end of this year, if we didn't spend any additional funds, we'd be up at 504, 745.
So now you get back to your roof.
So 350 has already been voted on to go in, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We voted on that a year
Yeah,
ago.
That's
Good.
And so if we put in 350 again next year, that's a no change. Is that right?
No change in the budget, and that would put this up at $854,000.
So then that comes back to the discussion about, do you want to do anything with the roof? And if you do something with it, how do you want to go about it? I found, at least in my time, that doing it from reserves is usually the best way. The money's already there. You're not going out for an additional ask from the taxpayers. You're not going out to bond. You're not paying interest on a loan.
What else is something like that, the reserves, the capital reserves, that's for a specific purpose? Could that be used for?
Well, Mike's looking to, he did some windows on the back side, correct, the playground side?
Yeah.
At Ludlow Elementary, he's looking to do the windows on the front side for about 24,000. So he'll be asking for that to come out of capital reserve.
So all
He did
capital
some-
reserve is maintenance.
So
Generally, that's what it is.
So what you can do, and this was done, I think we did it in the town vote last year, had the voters vote on it, is you can say, hey, we've got $1 million in surplus. Town voters, as part of the budget vote, we want you to vote 500,000 of that into a reserve account for special education because we don't know if those funds are drying up or not. So we used to have a facilities reserve, we had a transportation reserve fund, we had a special education reserve fund, we had a legal fund during COVID because the ability to get highly qualified people was minimal. And usually when you have people that aren't qualified, there's a lot of legal action in terms of labor issues. So as long as you're telling the community the general category of what the money's going to be used for, and they voted in there, the money's available to be used with a board vote as long as it's meeting that general category. So if it's facilities that was voted into, you got to use it towards facilities. Could have said that probably a lot shorter.
Okay. Just to make sure I understand. So that the 181,000, is that the coupon we use to go into this year?
Correct.
Okay. And that we can have a 479,000 coupon.
Nope.
Yep.
So what's left out of that is the 298, 125 after the FY25 audit. And we pull the money out that we were going to spend this year, which is the 181. We have a remainder of 298, 125 that we can use toward next year or some other purpose.
So typically, with a surplus, it's confusing because you see how it crosses 3 different years, what's going on there. It has to go through an audit. They have to confirm how much you have in that surplus before you can vote to do something with it, unless you're directly rolling it over into the next year. So you could allow this money to roll over in subsidized taxes for 2026, 27, or there could be a vote to decide to do something with it. You could, ask the town to vote to put it in one of those reserve funds if you wanted.
We don't have currently a bus reserve.
We do.
We do?
Yes.
Oh,
We've only put like $5,000 into it, but we.
Okay.
I think there's around $20,000 in there
Yeah.
right now.
But compared to the cost of a bus.
Yes.
Yeah. What, I know I ask this every time. What, we don't know, but what do we suspect will happen with reserves if the state gets its way and starts doing weird things?
So there
73.
There was wording, and I don't know if it made it into the final version of the bill. In the earlier versions, there was wording that if the districts were consolidated reserve funds, what's done with it would be decided by the Secretary of Education. With the assumption that all she could really do with it, if she wanted, was put it back in the education fund, right? Because it's taxpayer money. It needs to go back to the taxpayers, and the way to do it is to use it to subsidize the school taxes.
But not to Ludlow-Mount Holly.
No, but again, everybody pays for everybody.
Right. So we had,
So that money didn't come from Ludlow-Mount Holly only. It came from all the taxpayers across the state.
And based on like the timing of what was just put out yesterday, I think I just read it today. That's now looking at like closer to 10 years.
That's what
Possibly.
I would say 10 to 20.
Okay. So kind of thinking about like in our reserves for now, for the next budget season.
I would assume, as far as redistricting is concerned, because nothing is clear, just pretend that it doesn't exist and we're operating just like we normally do. That's the assumption that I
but I think even under Act 73, it wasn't going to happen until 28. And so as far as
Spend it all before we get there.
So yeah, so maybe okay. We're okay this next budget
So
season.
just, I know we don't, it's really early to talk about revenues at all, but in this budget that we currently have, without putting any of the surplus forward into the budget, we're looking at a $1 million increase to the general state support grant, and how we get that money is we raise it through taxes. So we have an $814,000 increase to the budget. And then if you look at that 181, we're just over $1 million that we need to do. So that coupon, we can use a portion of it to offset that. But if you don't, we're not reaching.
So would one possible approach to be to use the 300,000, a coupon for 300,000 to reduce the 800,000? No.
Well, no, you can't take it out of there because we've already committed it there. What you can do is take it out of your budget, which I don't know that I really recommend that you make that drastic of a cut.
So you're saying
You've already committed that to capital reserve, so you can't repurpose it without.
town.
Oh, okay. That's the, okay. The numbers, what's in green, right, is available, is that right?
The 298,125 is what's currently available to move forward in the FY27 budget.
So you can
Okay, so we could do a $298,000 coupon in effect.
Yes.
Right? And we would still, it looks like, have enough money in the capital to be able to do the roof and then and have other things if we need a new septic, if windows need, other smaller things.
Well, heck's
Is that wrong?
Yeah, you're not wrong. But what I would also point out is that when at some point you don't have a reserve, then it's going back on your taxes.
Right.
So I would caution you on how you use that. There was a point where we just did that as a rule because it really didn't have this swinging impact that
We want to keep it as neutral as possible.
Right.
Right.
So just because you have that doesn't mean you have to use it immediately, or you don't have to use it to your budget, but you have to do it
Right.
back to the taxpayer.
We could do a $150 coupon and $150 put it in the reserves.
You decided that you guys split it any way that you want.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and Lane had mentioned like a reserve for special ed, and that may not be a bad thing because that's what That's what gets you at the end.
And that's the biggest unknown with that ADA, the IDEA grant. That's a huge unknown. If we lose that 400, 500,000, that's a huge.
Well, I think we'll clearly come back to that as the numbers finalize.
Yeah.
But I guess as I'm looking at it, it's much harder to sell an 8% spending increase to the voters than it would be a 5% increase.
But remember, it made that 8% and who's paying for it. That 8% increase that you're looking at that we're talking about in our overall budget may or may not have any impact whatsoever on what taxpayers actually.
Well, I think it does. I mean, and it doesn't predict what the change will be from this year to next year. But I think if we spend 3% less, then our taxes will be 3% less.
No, that's how it doesn't work. That's why people get upset about their school
People
tax.
think it should work that way, which it should.
Which it should.
They should just give us a foundation formula.
I should say, if our spending per pupil, and again, it's per weighted or however they count the pupils now. No, that as I understand the way the system works, that you look at how much we're proposing to spend per pupil, and you compare that to the yield, all right? And that's what determines your tax rate after you throw the CLA in, right? And so because we don't know what the yield is going to be, we can't, no matter what we propose to spend, there's no way we can predict what our tax change will be until we know what the yield is going to be.
Right, which is December 1st.
And even then, last
year it kept changing after.
Well, 2 years ago, it kept changing. It didn't change quite as much this last year.
Right.
So I will tell you in a quick down and dirty number that taking that $350,000 out would be a 4.57% increase. But I really caution on doing that because it's taken a long time to get to have money to be able to put into that reserve in case we have some sort of emergency. So I don't think we want to cut it off back.
And you have deferred work on these buildings, which hopefully, they're in pretty good shape for Vermont standards. But you never know what's going to happen with a 50, 100-year-old building that hasn't had its roof replaced in more than 20 years. And
No, but am I wrong to understand that if we keep rolling as we are now, we would be using roughly half of and if we leave the 350 in the budget, right, we would might use roughly half of that to pay for the roof. And the other half would still be available for either the future or other things. Is that?
Would be for facilities things.
Other facilities, yeah, no, right. I mean, for other, if a septic system somewhere dies or if something bad happens, right?
Are you talking about putting in the 350 or not putting in the 350?
Leaving
the budget as being.
Leaving the 350 in the budget, right? And which is no change from last year,
Correct.
right?
Keeps it neutral.
And then, so we have that total 504 in the capital reserves and using roughly half of that to pay for the roof here. And the other half is either stays in the reserves for the future or it's there if a furnace dies, if something bad happens that's not expected. Is that?
Aren't you missing the 350 they are going to have this year?
Yes. So 504, we spend nothing else right now. 504 would be the balance at the end of
This year.
This year.
And then
But you see, that 350 is for FY 27.
Lane has it labeled.
Well, I was saying that we're also in this current budget, unless I picked it up wrong, is that we're also asking for that 350 in the new requested budget, or are we taking that out?
That's the conversation.
Because that's the conversation you're having. Because remember, I'm looking at our new requests. So are we leaving it in there, or are we taking it out for future years?
Okay, so does.
So at the end of this year, currently, at the end of this current year reading,
504.
we would have 504.
But do we want to leave that 350,000 in so that for
So
the next?
then we have 850?
Yes.
Okay.
You took the
If we
350.
spent nothing, we'd have 850. If we spent 250 on a roof, we'd have the balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why detailing?
It'll be, and we'll again, this is November. It'll be a lot
Right,
clearer.
there's a lot of discussion between now and then, and even what to do with that capital reserve. We still have a lot of conversation happen. There's information we don't have. I don't have the tech numbers. I don't have the December 1st letter. I don't have the long-term weighted membership.
All comes from this.
The child count will come December 1st. So there's still a lot of information to come that's going to change the landscape of this budget as it currently is.
You could still have your 298,000 to decide what to do with.
What to do with.
Right.
And so the issue with that becomes, go back to the coupon piece, as long as you use 181,000 of it again, right, you're keeping things steady state. If you don't use at least that much, then you're going to have to try to make it up somewhere else, right?
If we
If you
use,
use more than it, then you're building a bigger cliff in case that money's not available in the future. That's going to have to be potentially made up for cost cuts.
So to me, the part that's in green, how much of a coupon we should be using again for. I would come back to that after we know in more detail how much the attack increase would be. Whereas, as I understand on the capital side, if we don't go ahead and get bids now, then we might not be able to do the work this coming summer.
Correct.
But just because you get the bids doesn't mean you're deciding to do it.
And
See what the bids are.
it appears from this that we have enough money that, again, unless something really bad happens between now and next June that we're not expecting and we don't know about, that we'll have enough money in the capital reserve to pay for the roof and still have a bunch left over. And that we can, as we're doing the budget, decide if we want to once again put in 350 or put in 250 or some other number in order to make the budget fit.
But right now, it's assumed that the 350 is in there. The way that these numbers are.
is there any financial mathematical benefit to the bottom line if we trade in the coupon for the 350 and just like
If you
know what I'm
could,
saying?
I would argue, and again, off the cuff, I would argue doing whatever you can to get rid of that cliff so it doesn't show up unexpectedly one year is the best thing you could possibly do.
So that's not going to, so your increase with this budget, list of expenses that you have is 814,000. So that coupon is playing with your tax money, not your expense fund.
okay.
Right.
So I guess I would now try to separate the two issues and say we'll come back to the coupon next month or in the again before we put a budget out to the voters and once again make my motion that we use a portion of the 504, right, which might be 850 depending what we decide later, to get bids now for the whole roofing job. And that then obviously when the bids come in, it doesn't cost anything to ask for bids. It costs a little bit because you have to do the work.
Decisions.
Right.
But we'll be in a better position in a month or two from now to know whether we should be in fact accepting the bid.
I guess to that though, kind of like Cal Katie had mentioned before, if say now we're 2 months later and the bids come back, crazy high, then we're like, well, I wonder what it would be if it was just, the middle number. So can we ask for both?
You can do whatever you want.
So that in 2 months, we're not at a period now where it's
Right.
like, okay, that was too high. Let's see what it would be for just some.
I don't think it's a
Have all the
bad
information.
idea. I just crafted the motion. Right.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so I'll revise the motion then to say that we put out two, what they call requests for proposals. Is that the right? Okay, two requests for proposals. One to do the whole re-roofing, and one was you're the middle option there to do the
Air.
the repair, do the portion, the smaller portion, and the repairs that are associated with that, and defer the the part that's right now in good shape, or at least adequate shape. Is that a clear enough motion? Or did I talk too long?
She's not crying yet, and she'd usually ask a question if she was unclear, so.
Okay, anyway, so the motion is that we put out 2 requests for proposals, one to do the whole roofing job and one to do the repair and the smaller roofing job.
I think I would do it as one RFP though,
Right.
Yeah.
with asking for 2 different scenarios.
2 scenarios and 1 RFP.
Okay, I'll leave that to you. We request proposals on both
Yeah, how we get it done.
the big job and the smaller job. And with it, yeah.
All right, so Dave has made a motion to ask for an RFP that covers both the full repair of the entire roof and the most critical portions. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion about the roof motion?
The only thing that I would add to that is that I think we could also potentially explore grant money for this so that we can keep some of the reserves, maybe put that towards offsetting special education costs instead of building costs. I don't know how easy it is to get a grant at this point in time. But I know at one point there was like, rebates that you could get, especially if you were, putting solar on the roof or something like that. So I think we should at least explore grant money for the roof repair, rather than pulling it out of our capital reserve so that we can use our money towards special education instead if
Yeah, can we ask our contact, I've forgotten his name, the engineering folks, if they're, that's not separate, that's a separate discussion from the motion, because that's how we might pay for it, right?
We could certainly look, but at this time, most of those grants are federal and they're just.
Yeah.
The other piece which would be important for consideration is if the intent is to use some of that reserve money, for special education, which I think is a good idea. To be able to do that, it would need to be on the ballot for the townwide vote to be able to move that money into a special ed reserve.
But we
Right.
could take the money from like the surplus.
And have people
For a
vote
special
to put it directly into the special ed
Okay.
instead of shipping.
Yes. Yeah, special.
I have a question. How do you think if we posted an RFP now that we would get like pricing for 7 months from now? I'd be like, our contractors willing to do that? It seems like a long time in advance of the project, and given the volatility in like the materials market, I don't know if the numbers that we hear now in 2025 will still be applicable in the summer of 26.
So
Often contractors can do a forward purchase,
That's something.
that if they have the contract and we signed on the line, they can, if they commit now to buying something, somebody will give them, will buy it in advance and, all right.
Yeah.
Which is why you want to do this quickly.
So I would put in the bid that we expect the work would be done in the summer of 26.
Yeah.
Right.
So my question goes to what Julie's saying, when do we want this bid to come back? Because that drives when I put it out. Do you want it to come back for your next December meeting? I need to hustle it up and do it. You want it to come back for the January time? I mean, I generally give like 3 weeks because you don't want to give too long because people would put it to the side, but we're also coming into the holidays, which, can get lost.
Are we gonna have more of a definite number with all the information coming in that you were talking about from early December for like specific numbers budget wise?
Yes, but I won't have all more. No.
Okay, so we wait till we have all.
So early December, the state starts to give us numbers to be able to do some predictions with, but even those are their best prediction. They don't know what things are actually going to be until every town in the state has voted in its budget.
Really, it's not just the beginning of January that they have all the information, and I still,
So that's I'm just saying January may help more to have
but you also have to remember that
but
time frame is right across 2 holidays.
But based on what Todd said, it seemed like there's a risk to postponing it, that if they don't, if we're not committing in December, they might not be able to do it in the summer. Is that a risk?
The longer you wait, the less likely. But the question is how much construction is actually going to go on this coming summer, given the state of things. So that's the unknown. But yeah, no, usually they're starting to plan their projects now.
I'd say if we can get them for the December meeting, that would be best. And again, if we're like, nah, then we can, I mean, or if we don't get enough,
So December.
is that realistic though, Cheryl?
Worst case scenario, I get 1 or 2 bids, and I got to get a waiver through the.
I would have to get it out by the beginning of next week, in order to give them
3 weeks.
I'm gonna say, if you can do it, you know, you're not gonna fall on a sword in order to do it, but if you can do it, the sooner the better. Right.
add it to our list of feeling.
yes. That's nice. Okay, so out.
So is there a motion?
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I think that's not part of the motion. I mean,
Right, no, that was
in the
part of the
motion,
discussion.
it's
so,
part of the
yeah.
discussion, but in the end, we leave it to you to do what administratively you can do.
We can target people, so we would send it to people that we knew were roofers, but also put it on the market door.
Right, I think that's your job and not our job.
We have a motion on the table. We've seconded it. We've had discussion. Is there further discussion about it? We're going to try to do it by December. We're going to do for both scenarios. No other discussion. All right. All those in favor of moving forward with the RFP?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I didn't hear anything from the other KDK, so I don't know where is she still out there?
I raised my hand for yes.
Sorry, we can only see a limited thing. Thank
No
you.
worries.
All right.
We see you when you're talking, but
Right.
you're not.
One quick thing, just because it always comes up, tuition, I'm budgeting for 136 students, 21 of our 6th graders that are coming up. I did put a 10% increase on both in district and out of district because of the change that we saw last year, which is only going to be a $40,000 increase.
I also, while we're talking about budget, had in my phone to remind us to hit that fact highlighted a lot in our discussions that we are still paying for high school students. That seemed to get forgotten by a lot of people. They thought that our budget was for the 180 kids between Ludlow and Mount Holly and not the additional 130 that are going to area high schools that we pay tuition for. So we need to make sure that all of our information and things that we get out include that.
I've actually been talking to David about some things that we should include in the annual booklet that would help people understand our budget better. So he's been giving me some feedback on that. So if anybody else has something, let me know and we'll try to incorporate it in.
I think it's also important, and I'll say it now, but again, as we get, we as the school board members in our respective towns need to go to town meeting and speak up. I know that I try here, and I know that I'm one, you hand me a mic, I'll talk all night. And I know not everybody is like that, but I think it's really important that somebody speaks in Ludlow too. And so if we can make that happen, I think it would be great.
I'm sorry, so staying on the budget, just for one more question. So in Mount Holly, you said we have 94 students now. Do we expect probably a similar number next year? I mean, near as you can tell. And we have 8 classroom teachers, is that right?
Yes.
And in Ludlow, we have 7 classroom teachers. Is that right now?
Seven.
7. And do you know I know it fluctuates week to week, but how many students you have now?
We have 83.
83? And as far as you know, there's no reason to expect that to be dramatically different next year?
No.
I mean, it's not like we don't have the 402 sixth graders moving on. And so it looks to me as those are, even though there's one less teacher in Ludlow, the ratio is pretty similar.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it seems fair. Is that an accurate comment?
And that's what we worked hard to do with this past budget to be able to make those equal.
Equities.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we ready to move on to old business?
I hope so, yes. Sorry.
There's only so much coffee can get me through. Mandated policy update, second read for Series C students. And I know that Sydney's working on it. Have we made any progress on getting them findable on the website?
So once they get all approved by
He's been,
all of us.
yeah, I mean, he's got them on the website. Again, we can break them down any way people recommend. But right now it's Series C, student. So at least it's got the category names on it. But if folks want it broken down another way, just be explicit about what you want.
Check in the mail it.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Sorry. Okay. On the student conduct and discipline, it looks like a lot of the work is in the policy. Is the policy already written and in place, or is that something that's still to be done?
So the next process that we're going through is the rewriting of this stuff. We did a lot of corrections from the TRSU non-substantive ones, just cleaning up formatting and whatnot. Is then to go through each of those policies and see if we actually have existing protocols, and if not, to create them. So I think that's the question that you have.
Yes. No, I mean, on some of them,
Some of the policy is a protocol, but
right. But on this one, the policy is clearly a policy that tells you guys to do a lot of work.
yeah, a lot of them are that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the next analysis is once they've been approved and they're up in season, then I'm going to go through one by one, and the stuff that we don't have the protocols for, we're going to have to create them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I guess I'd appreciate it as you develop those policies, again, for the ones that are significant, that you put them in our packet so that I mean, even though it's your job to write the policy, it's our job to make sure that that your actions, how you're administering it, is consistent with the policy. Is it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you looking for?
You're looking for a motion to approve?
I'll say I like the change of the definitions at how we did them term district. It's not about
Yeah, and David picked up the district and median piece, so that was corrected as well.
Yeah, we talked about it at the TRSU meeting, and a bunch of them it was,
Not everybody.
some of them it wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve the, no, I don't,
Series C.
the Series C policies.
Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion about any of the Series C policies? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving Series C?
All right.
Anybody opposed? No, thank you. All right, VSBA recommended policy second read C29.
I move we approve
I
C29.
feel like we probably just did.
Oh, you think we did? Okay.
Well, my,
I think we did that with all the C's. It was kind of.
So A is
in there, so-
mandated, the B is the recommended.
oh,
Okay.
gotcha. Yeah,
The motion wasn't clear. The motion said all the Cs, so I think the
Right.
motion said both A
yeah.
and B.
You're right.
Okay.
All right, so we're moving on. Open board position Ludlow, there was some interest
I'm gonna go back and check
Yeah.
and see if I can find where Deb's email went.
Yeah.
That was my.
And there was a little miscommunication, which is understandable. But you'll reach out to that person and then hopefully they will join us for December and
Go through your vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
perfect.
Hey, Kelly, can I say something?
Yeah.
So I was just looking, I don't know if this is where we're at, but on the form that has like the Ludlow-Mount Holly board membership, it has.
They're
it has
backwards.
me-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to say, Jen?
Yeah, it has like the Mount Holly and Ludlow are swapped.
Yeah. Yeah. We already talked to Lane about that before the meeting and he's going to have
Oh,
Sydney
sorry,
fix it.
I was late.
No,
I'm sorry.
No, you weren't even here. It was before we told him. So it was, yeah, I think it's just a typo.
Okay.
All right, open board, new business, mandated policy updates, first read series D instruction. And these are all in our folder too. And
Get updated and cleaned up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we would have them come back in our December meeting for a final read and hopefully approval at that point. But is there any question or clarification on them at this point? None? Committee reports, Rural School Community Alliance.
So there were.
I mean, just very briefly, I mean, you all saw the email that they fortunately rejected the
CTS.
the proposal that was going to combine us with Bennington and everything in between. And they all realized that many of them didn't like the word forced mergers. Once they started calling them forced mergers, many of the members, I've listened to a bunch of the recording, said, no, there's no evidence that the forced merger saves any money and nobody wants it. So we're not going to vote for it. And I think it was 8-3 where they voted down that idea. And the idea they said to move forward with is establishing the BOCES and then looking to incentivize mergers of small districts, right? But doing that over not now. And they're first look at small districts and see if in fact are small districts more expensive than big ones. And looking at expenses and say, what kinds of expenses in fact lead to better outcomes and which ones don't. They haven't done any of that work. And so it was a 170-page report that had a lot of good things that ought to be looked at in the future was the gist of their report. And 10 or 20 years down the road, maybe we should be building new, bigger high schools someplace. But we shouldn't be, their conclusion was we can't redistrict now so that 10 or 20 years from now, we're ready to build a high school somewhere. So it was in many ways an encouraging meeting. And what I'm hopeful too is so much of Act 73 will go away if there's no redistricting approved. And I think the next bigger issue might be the foundation formula, which basically says every district should spend the same amount of money per student, regardless of what your needs are, regardless of whether you're paying a lot of money on a bond, whether you have to fix your buildings, that folks in Montpelier know better. And so the districts that are low spending have to increase their taxes and spend more. Districts that are high spending have to reduce their spending and lower their taxes. And I think that's a discussion that'll happen in January that we will need to be paying attention to. But other than that, again, just keep reading the news as it comes out.
It looks like, as we kind of discussed, I think earlier at a couple of the boards, the idea that as they get closer to having to face the reality of what they're looking at, people are going to start to speak up. And I think this is the first time that you're starting to see a little bit of the people digging in and being a little bit more forceful about the fact that this isn't going to work. There's only one provision in Act 73 that is guaranteed to save money. And that provision is the class size requirements. And so I'm not saying they should do it or not, but if they were really looking at saving money based upon Act 73, then they could get rid of everything else and just focus on the class sizes. Right, and not put everybody through all this misery, because that in and of itself would incentivize and push people to consolidate where consolidation is actually warranted. So I'll leave it at that. So not in agreement, but if you're going to analyze the thing, that's probably the only provision that would or could save money.
Next on our agenda was amend the resolution, Dave, but I think that is.
The VSBA voted down our resolution, but we decided to pay our dues, and seems to me it's a question next May, we will come back to it, and we'll see how they do. I think they're clearly more attuned to the variety of interests of their districts, and I suspect they'll be doing a better lobbying job this year than they did last year. But we'll see.
To be seen. Policies approved at this meeting. We did just approve the C series, and we'll bring the Ds for next time. I think our public. Any other public or board member comments out there?
Only I'll miss next month's meeting.
Okay, make sure.
I'll be 6 time zones later, and so it'll be midnight, I think, when they start. So hopefully you won't need me for a quorum.
December 10th, regular meeting, Ludlow Elementary School. Board self-evaluation is not on here, and now I need to find it on here. I don't know that I can.
It used to be attached.
Yeah, but it there it is. All right, but it no longer is.
Right.
Board members are given and read the agenda and background materials. Yeah, I think we were good. Board members are respectful of each other, public and administration.
Yes.
We handled conflict openly and constructively. Board members focused on the role and responsibility of the board.
Yeah.
And we acted as a team once a decision had been made. We worked collaboratively throughout the decision-making process. Yes. Thank you. And I would look to move that the board finds premature public knowledge of its discussions regarding labor negotiations with teachers would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage in regard to those negotiations.
Did you make the motion?
No, I'm saying I would like somebody to make that motion.
I so moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And then the second portion of that is move that the board enter into executive session. Sorry, we need to vote on the first one first.
Yes.
Sorry. All those in favor of premature public knowledge?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. All right, then I would look for a motion that the board enter executive session with the superintendent and the business manager to discuss the state of negotiations with the Teachers Association as is allowed under VSA 313.
So move.
Second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Beautiful. You'll take care of online people. Dave, I'm gonna grab that
Turn
door.
off recording.
8:18.
Session at
Recording is on, so.
9:05.
Yep.
Recording is going.
And Amber's back.
Is she still in there? Great.
Yeah, all good. Amber's there. We don't need to email her.
I love
I move we adjourn.
Thank
second
you.
that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
9:05 and a half.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.